At 11:17 p.m. on a Tuesday in late September, the silence in the two-bedroom condo was the loudest thing Sterling had ever heard. It was a hollow, echoing void where a life used to be. He stood in the middle of the living room, a 37-year-old aircraft mechanic making $58,000 a year, and surveyed the wreckage. But there was no wreckage, not in the traditional sense. There was just absence. The $3,200 leather sofa was gone. The $1,500 LG OLED television that had been mounted on the wall was gone, leaving behind a stark white bracket and 4 ugly holes. The mahogany coffee table, the one Brielle had insisted on buying for $800 from Crate and Barrel, was gone. Every rug, every lamp, every picture frame had been meticulously removed. He walked into the kitchen. The $2,500 stainless steel refrigerator stood open and empty, its little interior light illuminating nothing. Even the ice trays were gone. The cupboards were bare, stripped of the wedding gift plates and the glasses they'd bought at Target. He pulled out his phone, a 3-year-old Samsung Galaxy S10 with a crack in the corner. He opened his banking app, his thumb hovering over the screen. He already knew what he would find, but the finality of seeing it was a separate, colder dread. Joint checking account, $0. Joint savings account, $0. His personal checking account, where his direct deposit from MacDill Air Force Base landed, was the last bastion. He tapped it. Available balance, $213.47. She had left him with $213.47 to his name. Brielle, his wife of 6 years, had executed a flawless, systematic dismantling of their shared existence. The note she'd left on the barren kitchen counter was brief, written on a crisp sheet of $10 stationery in her perfect, looping cursive. Sterling, I've taken what's mine. The car is paid off, and in my name. The accounts are closed. I've moved on to a life I deserve. Don't contact me. There was no negotiation, no tearful goodbye, just a corporate-style liquidation. He sank to the floor, the cool linoleum a shock against his skin. He was a man who fixed the engines of C-130 cargo planes, a master of complex machinery and high-stakes diagnostics. He understood torque and pressure and catastrophic failure. But this was a different kind of system failure, one he had no tools to repair. He had his wallet, the clothes on his back, and a condo lease with his name on it that cost $2,200 a month. He had no furniture, no food, and $200. He had no idea that a crumpled piece of paper in his wallet, a forgotten $2 purchase from a Circle K, was about to become the most powerful tool in the world. But that moment was still 6 weeks away, an eternity from the hollowed-out silence of his empty life. Do you believe that sometimes the worst day of your life is actually the first day of your real one? Let us know in the comments what you think Sterling should do next. Their life together had been a carefully curated performance, directed by Brielle. Sterling, a steady and unassuming black man with neat, shoulder-length locks he kept tied back at work, had always been the stagehand. Brielle was the star. Her skin was a luminous, deep brown that she meticulously cared for with a regimen of products that cost upwards of $300 a month. She worked in marketing for a downtown real estate firm, a job that paid her $75,000 a year but gave her a taste for a lifestyle that cost 10 times that. She moved through the world with a sense of entitlement that Sterling had once mistaken for confidence. Their condo on Oakmont Drive was her showroom. "We need a statement piece," she'd declared one Saturday, pointing to a gaudy, gold-legged armchair in a furniture boutique in Hyde Park Village. The price tag read $1,850. "Bree, we can't afford that," Sterling had said, his voice low. He was thinking of the $150 he'd just spent on a new pair of Red Wing steel-toed boots for work, a purchase he'd agonized over for a month. Brielle had sighed, a long, theatrical exhalation. It's not about affording it, Sterling. It's about investing in our image. It's what people see. Nobody sees your greasy boots. She'd bought the chair on her credit card, another brick in the wall of debt she was building around them. The contrast was everywhere. Her closet was a temple to aspirational wealth, filled with $400 Michael Kors handbags, a $2,400 Burberry trench coat she'd worn twice, and a collection of shoes that was worth more than his 2012 Toyota Camry. His own closet was sparse, worn Carhartt jackets, neatly folded t-shirts, and the uniforms he wore on the base. He found satisfaction in his work, in the tangible reality of keeping billion-dollar aircraft flying. He loved the smell of jet fuel and the camaraderie of the hangar. The shared purpose with the other mechanics. Brielle hated it. "You come home smelling like a garage," she'd complain, wrinkling her nose as he walked in. "Can't you just get a desk job? Something clean?" "This is who I am, Brie. I'm good at it," he'd say, trying to keep the hurt out of his voice. "Being good at getting your hands dirty doesn't get us into the Palma Seca Golf and Country Club," she'd retort, not looking up from her iPad, where she was scrolling through listings for multi-million-dollar homes in South Tampa. $58,000 a year doesn't buy a life, Sterling. It buys a cage. He tried. He really did. He took on extra shifts, pulling weekend duty to patch up the financial hole she created. He learned to cook her favorite meals, trying to create moments of domestic peace. He'd spend hours in the kitchen preparing braised short ribs, a recipe he found online, hoping the smell would welcome her home and soften her edges. Sometimes it worked. She'd kiss his cheek, call him her amazing chef, and for an evening, they would feel like a real couple. They'd sit on the $3,200 sofa and watch a movie on the $1,500 TV, and he'd let himself believe this was enough. But the peace never lasted. It was always punctured by a credit card bill, a passive-aggressive comment, or a dismissive laugh. One evening, his mother called. She was a warm, kind woman who lived in a modest but immaculate home in Brandon. She was a retired nurse, a pillar of her local church community. "Your cousin Jamal is getting married," she'd said, her voice full of joy. "The whole family is so excited." Sterling felt a surge of warmth. "That's great, Mama. Tell him I said congratulations." After he hung up, Brielle looked at him from across the room, her expression unreadable. "Brandon," she said, the word tasting like an insult. "Are we going to have to go to some potluck in a church basement?" "It's family, Brielle." "It's not the kind of family that helps us get ahead," she'd replied, turning her attention back to her phone. He had no idea she was already planning her exit, already consulting with a divorce attorney, already seeing someone else, a developer who owned a fleet of European cars and a penthouse overlooking the bay. She was building her new life, while still living in the old one. And he was just a piece of furniture she hadn't gotten around to moving out yet. The unraveling began with 1,000 tiny cuts. Cruelty became Brielle's primary language. It started with casual dismissals and escalated into surgical strikes on his self-worth. One Thursday night, Sterling came home late, his body aching from a 12-hour shift, troubleshooting a persistent hydraulic leak on a KC-135 Stratotanker. He was proud. He'd found the faulty valve that 3 other mechanics had missed. He walked in, his hands still stained with grease, despite scrubbing them raw. Brielle was dressed for a night out, wearing a sleek black dress that probably cost more than his weekly paycheck. A $6,000 Chanel bag was perched on the kitchen island. She was sipping a glass of white wine. "You're finally home," she said, her tone flat. "I was about to leave without you." "Leave? "Where are we going?" he asked, confused. She let out a short, bitter laugh. "Not we, Sterling. I. I have a networking event at the Tampa Museum of Art. You know, with people who matter. I told you about it last week." He didn't remember. His mind was a catalog of engine specs and maintenance schedules. "I'm sorry, I forgot." "I was slammed at work." "Of course you were," she said, looking him up and down with open disdain. "Look at you. You can't go anywhere looking like that anyway. You'd embarrass me." She took another sip of wine. "Just order a pizza or something. Use the emergency cash in the drawer." The emergency cash was a $50 bill he'd put there for a power outage. The implication was clear. His presence was its own kind of minor disaster. The arguments grew more frequent, more pointed. She stopped hiding her contempt. One Saturday he was trying to balance their budget. A stack of bills and receipts spread across the dining table he'd bought for $400 from a second-hand store. "This is unsustainable, Brielle," he said, his voice strained. "Your credit card payment was $2,800 last month. That's almost my entire take-home pay." She walked over, looked at his spreadsheet, and scoffed. "You're tracking a $6 coffee from Starbucks? How pathetic." "This is the problem, Sterling. You think small. You will always think small. You're a $58,000 man in a $1 million world." "This is our world," he shot back, his frustration finally boiling over. "This is the money we actually have." "No," she said, her voice dropping to a cold, quiet whisper that was more terrifying than any shout. "This is the money you have. I'm destined for more. I won't be anchored to your mediocrity." That was the moment he knew it was over. The word anchored hit him like a physical blow. She saw him as a weight, a thing holding her down. The final day was surreal in its efficiency. It was a Tuesday. He came home from the base at 5:30 p.m. to find a U-Haul truck, a small one, a 10-foot box truck that cost $19.95 plus mileage, parked in their designated spot. Brielle was directing two of her friends, women Sterling had never liked, as they carried boxes out of the condo. She wasn't crying. Her face was set in a mask of grim determination. "Brielle, what is this?" he asked, his heart beginning to pound a heavy, panicked rhythm against his ribs. She didn't look at him. She pointed to the sofa her friends were struggling with. "Careful with the corners. I don't want it scratched." She finally turned to Sterling, her eyes as cold and hard as polished stones. "I'm leaving, Sterling. It's over." "Over? Just like that? You're just taking everything?" "I'm taking what my salary paid for," she said, a cruel twist to her lips. It was a lie. His salary had paid the rent, the utilities, the groceries. Her salary had paid for the depreciating assets she was now hauling away. The sofa, the TV, the dining set, all of it. "I have the receipts." He stood there, paralyzed, as they stripped the place bare. They took the pots and pans. They took the towels from the bathroom. They even took the half-empty bottle of $12 dish soap from under the sink. It was a calculated act of humiliation designed to leave him with absolutely nothing. The last thing to go was the television. As one of her friends disconnected the cables, Brielle walked over to him. "I've already been to the bank," she said, her voice low and confidential, as if sharing a secret. "I cleared out the joint accounts. It's about $87,000. Consider it my severance package." He could only stare at her. The woman he had married, the woman he had loved, was a stranger. A ruthless, efficient stranger. "You're leaving me with nothing," he whispered, the words catching in his throat. She almost smiled. "Not nothing," she said, and her tone was the final, deepest cut. I'm leaving you with the rent payment. It's due on the 1st. She turned and walked away, climbing into the passenger seat of the U-Haul without a backward glance. He watched the truck pull out of the complex, its taillights disappearing into the Tampa traffic. He was left in the echoing silence, with the note on the counter and $213 in his bank account. The underestimation was complete. She had reduced him to a balance on a screen, a problem to be discarded. She had no idea she had just made the biggest financial miscalculation of her life. The 6 weeks that followed were a masterclass in quiet desperation. The first night Sterling slept on the floor, using his work jacket as a pillow. The cool, hard floorboards seemed to leach the warmth from his body. At 2 a.m., he woke up shivering, the profound emptiness of the condo a physical presence. The next morning at 6:47 a.m., he drove his 2012 Toyota Camry with its 187,000 miles and a persistent rattle in the exhaust, not to MacDill, but to his mother's house in Brandon. The drive felt like a pilgrimage of shame. He passed the gleaming glass towers of downtown Tampa, symbols of a world he no longer had any claim to. He passed the Starbucks on Lexington, where he and Brielle used to get coffee, a $14 weekend ritual that now seemed like an impossible luxury. When he arrived at his mother's modest single-story home, with its perfectly manicured garden of hibiscus and gardenias, he felt like a failure. His mother, a wise and gentle black woman named Clara, opened the door before he even knocked. She took one look at his face, her warm brown eyes full of a deep, knowing sorrow. She didn't ask questions. She simply pulled him into a hug, her arms a haven of unconditional love. "The spare room is ready for you, baby," she whispered into his hair. The spare room was small, filled with boxes of old family photos and his late father's books. The bed was a twin, the mattress soft and worn. But it was clean, and it was safe. That night, lying in the narrow bed, he could hear the gentle hum of his mother's television in the living room. It was the sound of security, a sound he hadn't realized he'd been missing for years. Life became a series of small, grinding humiliations. The condo lease was an anchor around his neck. He called the property manager, explained the situation, and paid a $4,400 penalty to break the lease, draining his meager savings and requiring a painful $4,000 loan from his mother. He sold his father's old Omega Seamaster watch, a treasured keepsake, to a pawn shop for $350 just to have cash for gas and food. He put most of his belongings, the few clothes Brielle had left, his tools, his military service awards, into a 5x5 storage unit that cost $68 a month. His commute to MacDill became a 2-hour ordeal. To save gas, he would drive his Camry to the Heartline bus station and take the Route 36 bus the rest of the way. He'd sit among the other working-class people of Tampa, his head down, the shame a hot coal in his stomach. He, a highly skilled mechanic trusted with multi-million-dollar military assets, was counting out quarters for bus fare. He ate his lunch, a peanut butter sandwich, and an apple packed by his mother, in the break room, avoiding the invitations from his work buddies to go out for lunch. He couldn't afford the $15 for a burger and fries. He didn't contact Brielle. His pride wouldn't let him. More than that, he knew it would be useless. She had made her decision. Any contact would only be an invitation for more cruelty. He just put his head down and worked, his focus on the intricate machinery of the aircraft, a welcome escape from the shambles of his life. The logic of hydraulics and the precision of turbine engines were a comfort. They made sense. They followed rules. It was during the third week of this bleak new reality, on a Wednesday afternoon, that he made the fateful purchase. He had stopped at a Circle K on Dale Mabry Highway to put $10 of gas in his car. As he was paying the cashier, he saw the Powerball sign. The jackpot was an astronomical figure, something like $750 million. On a whim, a tiny, hopeless act of defiance against the crushing weight of his circumstances, he slid $2 more across the counter. "One Powerball ticket, please," he said. "Quick pick." The cashier handed him the small slip of paper. He glanced at the numbers 04, 08, 15, 16, 23, 42, and thought nothing of them. It was a fantasy, a $2 dream. He tucked the ticket into the back pocket of his wallet, behind his military ID and his expired credit cards, and promptly forgot all about it. That week, Brielle's lawyer sent him the official divorce papers. He signed them at his mother's dining room table, using a cheap 50-cent Bic pen, and sent them back without a single amendment. He agreed to everything. He just wanted it to be over. He was surrendering. Or so he thought. He had no idea he was actually holding the declaration of his own independence. A folded piece of paper worth more than every skyscraper in Tampa combined. The suffering was immense. He lost 20 pounds. Dark circles formed under his eyes. He felt invisible, erased. At work, he was a ghost, performing his duties with a quiet, hollowed-out efficiency. His supervisor, a grizzled master sergeant named Wallace, pulled him aside one day. "Sterling, you doing okay, son? You're not yourself?" "I'm fine, Sarge. Just some stuff at home," Sterling mumbled. "If you need to talk, my door is always open. The Air Force has resources, you know, chaplains, counselors." "I appreciate it, Sarge. I'll be all right." But he wasn't sure he would be. The future was a gray, featureless wall. Every dollar was accounted for, every expenditure a source of anxiety. He was drowning, and the shore was nowhere in sight. The world had shrunk to the size of his mother's spare room, the rumbling interior of the city bus, and the loud, greasy hangar at MacDill. This was his cage now, a far more real one than the one Brielle had accused him of living in, and for 6 long weeks he saw no way out. Wednesday, November the 8th, the day the world tilted on its axis. It had been 6 weeks and 1 day since Brielle had vaporized his life. Sterling was sitting on his mother's floral print sofa, a well-worn piece from the 1990s that felt more comfortable than Brielle's $3,200 leather monstrosity ever had. He was watching Bay News 9, the local 24-hour news channel. His mother was in the kitchen, humming a gospel hymn as she washed the dinner dishes. The air smelled of the lemon-scented soap she used, a smell of clean, simple comfort. A story about a zoning dispute in St. Petersburg ended, and the anchor, a familiar face named Veronica Cintron, smiled into the camera. And now for tonight's winning Powerball numbers with a jackpot of an estimated $750 million. Good luck, Tampa Bay. The familiar animated sequence of bouncing lottery balls began. Sterling barely paid attention. He'd bought a ticket weeks ago, but the hope attached to it had evaporated within hours. It was just a ghost in his wallet now. Tonight's winning numbers are... The first blue ball settled into place. 4. Sterling's head lifted slightly. Huh, he thought. That's Mama's birthday month. The next number is 8. A flicker of something. A strange electric prickle on the back of his neck. That's the day Dad passed. Followed by 15. He sat up straight now. His heart gave a single hard thump against his ribs. My birthday. And then we have 16. He stopped breathing. His hand, almost of its own volition, went to his back pocket and pulled out his worn leather wallet. It felt heavy, thick, with the useless cards of a former life. 23. His fingers were trembling as he fumbled through the wallet's compartments. He pulled out the crumpled, faded slip of paper from the Circle K. He unfolded it, his eyes darting from the television screen to the ticket. The numbers were blurry. He blinked, trying to focus. And the final white ball is 42. The numbers on the screen burned in a neat, impossible line. 04, 08, 15, 16, 23, 42. He looked down at the ticket. 04, 08, 15, 16, 23, 42. The room went completely silent. The hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen seemed to roar in his ears. The ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall sounded like a drum beat. He looked at the screen. He looked at the ticket. Screen. Ticket. The numbers did not change. They were a perfect, irrefutable match. And the Powerball, the anchor continued, her voice chipper and oblivious, is 10. Again, the winning white balls are 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, and 42. He hadn't matched the Powerball. He hadn't won the grand prize. A wave of something that was almost relief washed over him. Of course, it was impossible. For a dizzying second, he had let himself believe. Then the text appeared on the bottom of the screen. A chyron that would alter the course of his life forever. Jackpot winning ticket sold in Tampa, Florida. He looked at his ticket again. He had matched the 5 white balls, but not the Powerball. What did that mean? A few $1,000s? He'd take it? A few $1,000s would be a lifeline. The anchor was talking again. We have incredible news just breaking. While no ticket matched all 6 numbers to win the grand prize, the lottery is reporting that a single ticket sold right here in Tampa matched the first 5 numbers. And because the player selected the power play option, power play? He looked at his ticket. Next to the quick pick letters, it said power play, yes. He hadn't even known what that was. He'd just said yes when the cashier asked. The anchor's voice rose with excitement. That ticket is not worth $1 million. Tonight's power play multiplier was 10. We are confirming that the second prize ticket sold in Tampa is worth $10 million. Wait. No. That couldn't be right. He looked at his ticket again. The numbers were right. The power play was there. The news ticker said a jackpot ticket was sold in Tampa. He must have misheard. This was too confusing. Then his mother walked in from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Did they say someone in Tampa won that big lottery?" she asked, peering at the screen. "Lord, can you imagine? $750 million. "No, Mama," Sterling said, his voice a dry, cracking whisper. "No one won the big one." Just then, the screen graphic changed. A correction. The anchor looked down at her papers, flustered. "I am so sorry, viewers, we are getting a major correction from the Lottery Commission. It appears I misread the initial report. There was a single jackpot winner. 1 ticket sold at the Circle K on Dale Mabry Highway matched all 6 numbers, including the Powerball." Sterling's eyes shot to the screen. The numbers were still there. 04, 08, 15, 16, 23, 42, and the Powerball, 10. He looked at his ticket. He had been so focused on the first 5 numbers, on the impossibility of what he was seeing, that he had completely ignored the last number on the line, the final number in the sequence. PB 10. He had them all. He had all of them. The ticket in his hand was not worth $10 million. It was worth $750 million. Sterling lowered the ticket. He looked at his mother. He looked at the television. He felt nothing. Not joy, not excitement, just a profound, terrifying stillness. The universe had just reached down and rewritten every law he had ever known. He slowly, carefully, folded the slip of paper and put it back in his wallet. He stood up. "I'm going to turn in for the night, Mama," he said, his voice perfectly even. So early? Are you feeling all right, baby? Just tired, he said, and kissed her on the cheek. Long day. He walked into his small room and closed the door. He sat on the edge of the twin bed for a long time in the dark, the wallet a lead weight in his pocket. He was not a $58,000 man anymore. He was a $750 million man. And his first and only thought was, she can never know. The sun rose at 7:02 a.m. Sterling had not slept. He had spent the night staring at the ceiling, the lottery ticket safely tucked inside a book on his nightstand, a biography of the Tuskegee Airmen. At 7:15 a.m., he called his supervisor at MacDill. Sarge, it's Sterling. I'm not feeling well. I won't be in today. Everything okay, son? Master Sergeant Wallace asked, concern in his voice. Yeah, just a bug. I'll be fine, Sterling lied, his voice a mask of calm composure. This was the first lie in his new life, and it came easier than he expected. He spent the next 2 hours on his mother's old desktop computer, a 2015 Dell that hummed and whirred with effort. He didn't search for mansions or sports cars. He typed, "One Lottery Florida what to do" and "Florida Lottery Anonymous Claim." He learned that Florida was one of the few states that allowed lottery winners to remain anonymous if the prize was over $250,000. The key was to claim the prize through a legal trust. Anonymity was his shield, his fortress. He needed a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but a specialist, a shark. He searched for Top Asset Protection Attorneys, Tampa. The first result was a firm downtown, Vance, Holloway, and Stern. Their website was sleek, professional, and exuded quiet power. The managing partner's bio caught his eye. Alana Vance, a graduate of Howard University and Harvard Law. A black woman who specialized in high net worth individuals and complex trusts. Her picture showed a woman in her late 40s with sharp, intelligent eyes and an expression that said she did not suffer fools. Her billing rate was listed on the site, $1,200 per hour. Last week, that figure would have made him physically ill. Today, it was a rounding error. He called the firm at 9:01 a.m. Vance, Holloway, and Stern, how may I direct your call? A crisp voice answered. I'd like to schedule a consultation with Ms. Alana Vance, Sterling said, surprised at the steadiness of his own voice. It's a time-sensitive financial matter. Of course, Ms. Vance is currently booked for the next 3 weeks, but I can... Tell her, Sterling interrupted, a newfound authority in his tone, that my matter concerns a recent 9-figure liquidity event and I require absolute discretion. There was a pause on the other end of the line. He could hear the click of a keyboard. Please hold, sir. 30 seconds later, Alana Vance herself was on the phone. This is Alana Vance. To whom am I speaking? My name is Sterling. I believe I need your services. I have an opening at 2 p.m. today. My office is on the 40th floor of the SunTrust building. Bring identification and nothing else, she said, and the line went dead. At 1:45 p.m., Sterling stood in front of the gleaming glass and steel skyscraper. He was wearing his only suit, a 10-year-old, slightly too tight black suit from Men's Warehouse that had cost $220. He felt like an imposter. But as he rode the silent, high-speed elevator to the 40th floor, a strange calm settled over him. This was just another system, a legal and financial system, and he was a man who understood systems. Alana Vance's office had a panoramic view of Hillsborough Bay. She was even more formidable in person, dressed in an impeccably tailored $8,700 Armani suit. She didn't smile. She gestured for him to sit. You mentioned a 9-figure event, she said, her voice like polished granite. Elaborate. Sterling took a deep breath. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the ticket, and slid it across her massive mahogany desk. She picked it up, her expression unchanging. She examined the front, then the back. She pulled a jeweler's loupe from her desk drawer and inspected the paper, the ink, the barcode. The silence stretched for a full minute. Finally, she looked up at him. For the first time, her eyes showed a flicker of something other than professional detachment. It might have been respect. "Well, Mr. Sterling," she said, "it appears you do, in fact, require my services." For the next 3 hours, Alana laid out the plan. It was a masterpiece of legal strategy. "First, silence," she commanded. "You tell no one. Not your mother, not your best friend, not a soul. From this moment on, I am the only person you speak to about this. Understood?" "Understood," Sterling said. "Second, we will form a revocable living trust. We'll give it a name that means something to you but is utterly anonymous. This trust will be the legal entity that claims the prize." "Bayshore Aviation Trust," Sterling said without hesitation. Alana nodded, a slight smile touching her lips. "Good. Third, you will sign the back of the ticket, but not with your name. You will sign the name of the trust. I will handle that. Fourth, we will travel to Tallahassee together to present the ticket at the lottery headquarters. We will select the lump sum option, which after federal taxes will be approximately $384 million. The number hung in the air, so vast it was meaningless. "There is one complication," Alana continued, her tone serious. "You said you are recently separated. When was this ticket purchased?" "About a week before she left," Sterling said. Alana's face hardened. "Then it is marital property. Your wife, legally, has a claim to half of it." The air went out of the room. The calm he had felt shattered. "No," he said. The word a choked whisper. "No? After what she did? She left me with nothing." "The law doesn't care about fairness, Mr. Sterling. It cares about timelines and legal definitions," Alana said. "If she finds out, she will sue, and she will win." A cold, hard fury began to build in Sterling's chest, a fury he hadn't allowed himself to feel until now. "Then she can't find out," he said, his voice low and firm. Alana studied him for a long moment. "This is why you came to me," she said. "Anonymity is your only weapon. We will build a fortress of trusts and LLCs so high and so thick that by the time she even suspects, the money will be a ghost. It will require absolute discipline from you. No new car, no mansion, no sudden changes in lifestyle. You will continue to live with your mother. You will go back to work at MacDill. You will be the same Sterling you were yesterday. Can you do that?" He thought of Brielle's mocking laugh. He thought of her taking the dish soap. He thought of the empty condo and the $213 in his account. "Yes," he said, "I can do that." "Good," Alana said, leaning back in her chair. "Then let's get to work." The strike was executed with the quiet precision of a military operation. Over the next 2 weeks, Alana Vance and her team worked with breathtaking efficiency. The Bayshore Aviation Trust was legally formed. A series of shell corporations and LLCs were established, creating a labyrinthine structure designed to obscure the final destination of the funds. Sterling went back to work at MacDill, putting in his hours, troubleshooting engines, his mind a million miles away. His colleagues noticed he was quieter than usual, but they attributed it to the stuff at home he'd mentioned. He was a ghost in his own life, playing the part of the man he used to be. The day of the claim, a Tuesday, Sterling and Alana flew to Tallahassee on a private jet, a $15,000 expense that Alana's firm fronted. Sterling, who had spent his life fixing planes, had never actually flown in one that wasn't a military transport. He sat on the plush leather seat, looking out the window at the clouds, feeling a profound sense of dislocation. At the Florida Lottery headquarters, they were ushered into a secure, sterile office. The officials were professional, their faces betraying none of the excitement you'd expect. This was just paperwork to them. Alana did all the talking. She presented the ticket, now signed Bayshore Aviation Trust, and the mountain of legal documents. The lottery's legal team reviewed everything for 2 hours. Sterling just sat there, his hands folded in his lap, his expression placid. He was the calm center of a financial hurricane. Finally, the head of security, a tall man with a severe haircut, nodded. Everything appears to be in order. At 3 p.m., the Florida Lottery held a press conference. Sterling and Alana watched it on a monitor in a back office. The lottery spokesperson stood at a podium, the familiar logo behind him. "We are thrilled to announce that the $750 million Powerball jackpot from the November 8th drawing has been claimed," he said, smiling for the cameras. The winning ticket was claimed by the Bayshore Aviation Trust. The winner has elected to take the lump sum payment of $496 million. As is their right under Florida statute, the trustee has requested to remain anonymous. We will not be releasing any further information about the identity of the winner. Meanwhile, in her sleek new apartment in the Channel District, a $3,500 a month rental she'd secured with the money from their joint account, Brielle was watching Bay News 9. She was half listening, scrolling through Instagram on her new iPhone 15 Pro. The breaking news alert flashed across the screen. $750 million Powerball jackpot claimed by anonymous Tampa Trust. She looked up, annoyed at the interruption. The news anchor was repeating the details. The winner, claiming through the Bayshore Aviation Trust, will remain anonymous. Brielle frowned. Bayshore. Sterling loved walking along Bayshore Boulevard. Aviation. His stupid, greasy job. A cold knot of dread began to form in her stomach. It was probably nothing. A coincidence. Then they showed the date of the drawing again. November the 8th. And the winning numbers, 04, 08, 15, 16, 23, 42. Brielle's blood ran cold. She dropped her phone. April. Clara's birthday. April. August. The day his father died. August. 15. Sterling's birthday the 15th. 16. The age he was when he started working on cars. 23. Michael Jordan's number. His hero. 42. Jackie Robinson's number. His other hero. She knew those numbers. He had played them for years. Every week, like a pathetic ritual. She had mocked him for it. "You have a better chance of getting struck by lightning?" She'd sneered 100 times. No, she thought, it can't be. He couldn't be that lucky. The universe wasn't that cruel. She grabbed her phone, her hands shaking so badly she could barely type his name. She pulled up his contact and hit call. It went straight to voicemail. "Sterling? It's me. I just saw the news. Call me back. It's important." She hung up and immediately called again. Voicemail. She called a third time. And a fourth. She stared at the screen, at the astronomical number, $750 million, and felt a wave of nausea so profound she had to sit down. The beautiful, expensive life she had curated for herself suddenly felt cheap, small, and suffocating. The $87,000 she had been so proud of stealing felt like a pittance, an insult. She had traded a kingdom for a handful of dust, and the man she had underestimated, the man she had dismissed as a $58,000 nobody, was now a silent, invisible king. The strike was complete. He hadn't fired a shot, but her world had just been leveled. The aftermath was a cascade of digital desperation. Brielle's panic escalated from disbelief to fury to pathetic pleading, all documented in the call log and text history on Sterling's phone, which he watched with a detached, clinical calm. Alana had advised him not to block her number. "Let her show her true colors," the attorney had said. "It's all evidence. should we ever need it. The first wave was denial. Text 1, 3:17 p.m. Sterling? Did you see the news? Call me. Text 2, 3:21 p.m. That was your ticket, wasn't it? The numbers. I know those are your numbers. This isn't funny. Missed call, 3:22 p.m. Missed call, 3:23 p.m. Text 3, 3:25 p.m. You have to call me. We need to talk about this. Sterling was on the private jet back to Tampa, sitting across from Alana. He read the texts and felt a cold, satisfying quiet. He simply powered his phone off. When he turned it back on the next morning, the floodgates had opened. The denial had morphed into rage. There were 27 missed calls. Voicemail 1:04:02 p.m. Sterling, pick up the phone. I know it was you. You think you can hide $750 million from me? From your wife? The divorce isn't even final. That is our money. Do you hear me? Ours. Voicemail 2, 5:15 p.m. How dare you? How dare you do this to me? After everything I did for you, trying to build a life for us, you were hiding this all along. You are a selfish, manipulative bastard. My lawyer will be in touch. I will take you for every single penny you have. Text 4, 6:30 p.m. You are going to regret this. I'm going to tell everyone what you did. I will drag your name through the mud. You won't have a shred of dignity left. The threats only made Sterling feel more secure. He forwarded the screenshots and voicemail files to Alana with a simple message, "For the file." Her reply was instant. Excellent. Keep ignoring her. By the third day, the rage had curdled into panicked negotiation. The reality of her colossal miscalculation was sinking in. The $87,000 she'd taken was a finite resource. Her $3,500 per month rent was no longer a sign of success but a terrifying liability. The developer she'd left Sterling for was already proving to be less of a Prince Charming and more of a controlling narcissist. Text 5, Day 3, 9:12 a.m. Sterling, baby, please. I was just upset. I didn't mean what I said. We can fix this. We can be happy. Think of the life we could have. Anything you want? A house on the water, travel the world. Just call me, please. Voicemail 3, Day 3, 11:45 a.m. Her voice is softer now, trembling. I miss you. I made a mistake. A terrible, terrible mistake. I was stressed. I wasn't thinking clearly. That man? He's not you. You're a good man, Sterling. You've always been a good man. I was a fool. Please, just give me another chance. I love you. The I love you was the most pathetic, transparent lie of all. He remembered her face when she told him he was an anchor. He remembered the coldness in her eyes as her friends took the dish soap. That was the real Brielle? This pleading, desperate woman on the phone was a stranger. The consequences cascaded through her life. Her friends, the same ones who had helped her empty the condo, grew distant. They had celebrated her escape from her boring mechanic husband. Now they looked at her with a mixture of pity and contempt. She had fumbled a winning lottery ticket the size of a small country's GDP. She became a joke in their social circle. Her new boyfriend, the developer, heard the rumors. He confronted her. Is it true? Your loser ex-husband won the Powerball? When she admitted it, he laughed in her face. And you left him for me. With what, 80 grand? You're an idiot. Their relationship imploded within a week. She called her lawyer, the same one who had drafted the swift, brutal divorce papers. We have to sue him. It's marital property. The lawyer was blunt. Brielle, who are we suing? The Bayshore Aviation Trust? We have no proof Sterling is connected to it. It's anonymous. To file a suit, we'd need evidence, and we have none. All you have is a hunch about some numbers. A judge would laugh you out of court. You signed the papers. You took the settlement. It's over. Brielle was trapped. She had built her identity on the idea of a bigger, better life, and she had single-handedly thrown it away. The money she'd taken, which was supposed to be her launch pad, was now just a painful reminder of her greed. It was a fortune to the man she'd left, but a pittance to the man she'd lost. Her downfall wasn't loud or dramatic. It was a quiet internal collapse. She was left in her expensive, empty apartment, with her expensive, useless things, checking her phone every 30 seconds for a call that would never come. She had taken everything from Sterling, and in doing so, had lost everything that mattered. 1 year later, the rain of a Tampa summer afternoon fell softly against the windows of a beautifully restored 1920s bungalow in Hyde Park. The house was not a mansion. It was a statement of taste and restraint, a $2.1 million property that Sterling had paid for in cash. The interior was filled with warm woods, comfortable furniture, and art by local black artists. There were no gaudy statement pieces, no tributes to aspirational wealth. It was a home, not a showroom. Sterling, now 38, sat in a worn leather armchair, a book open in his lap. He looked different. The deep-set lines of stress around his eyes were gone. He had gained back the weight he'd lost. His locks were still neat, but they hung freely around his shoulders. He was at peace. His life had changed, but he had not. He did not own a fleet of sports cars. He drove a new, top-of-the-line 2025 Ford F-150, a practical $70,000 truck that he used for hauling gardening supplies from the local nursery. He had quit his job at MacDill, but not before making one final, anonymous gesture. Through the Bayshore Aviation Trust, he had made a $5 million donation to the MacDill Families Fund, a charity that supported the families of enlisted personnel facing hardship. It was more money than the fund had seen in a decade. Master Sergeant Wallace had called him, his voice thick with emotion, to tell him the incredible news, never suspecting Sterling was the benefactor. His greatest passion project was the Sterling Aviation Scholarship Fund. Working with Hillsborough Community College, Ichiuwaf, Tistau, he had endowed a perpetual scholarship that provided full tuition, books, and a living stipend for 20 students a year entering the aircraft mechanics program. He insisted the focus be on students from low-income backgrounds, kids who had the talent but not the means. He sometimes sat in on the classes, an anonymous guest, and watched the students, their faces bright with focus and opportunity, and felt a satisfaction deeper than any amount of money could buy. He still lived a quiet life. His mother, Clara, now lived in a beautiful new home just a few blocks away, her mortgage paid in full. He had hired a full-time gardener for her, and her yard was now a local landmark. He spent his mornings reading and his afternoons working in his own garden. In the evenings, as the sun began to set, he would often take a long walk along Bayshore Boulevard, the city skyline on one side, the vast, open water on the other. One evening, during one of these walks, he saw her. Brielle was walking out of a restaurant, the same one she had once mocked him for not being able to afford. She was with a man, an older man who looked tired and wealthy. Brielle herself looked diminished. The luminous glow she once had was gone, replaced by a hard, brittle finish. Her dress was expensive, but she wore it like a uniform. She laughed at something the man said, but the sound didn't reach her eyes. For a second, their eyes met across the busy street. There was a flicker of recognition in her face, followed by a wave of shock, shame, and a deep, bottomless regret. Sterling felt nothing. No anger, no pity, no satisfaction. It was like looking at an old photograph of a person he used to know. He gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod, a final acknowledgement of the chapter she represented in his life, and then he turned and continued his walk toward the setting sun. He had learned the hardest and most valuable lesson of his life. Brielle had been right about one thing. He had been living in a cage. But the cage wasn't his $58,000 salary. The cage was his belief that he needed her approval to be whole. The cage was the life she had demanded they build. She hadn't just taken the furniture and the money. She had, without meaning to, taken the cage with her, leaving him with the one thing he truly needed: freedom. True wealth is not measured by the balance in your bank account, but by the peace in your heart. It is the freedom to be who you are, the ability to give without seeking recognition, and the quiet joy of a life built on purpose, not performance. Sterling had lost a wife and a house, but he had gained the entire world. He had gained himself. What do you think is the true meaning of wealth? Share your thoughts with our community below. And if this story resonated with you, remember to subscribe to Love Beyond Pride for more stories of justice and new beginnings.